Welcome back, everyone. We're doing more Script Camp. This week, we are doing TV Boot Camp themed around writing sci-fi TV shows. Script Camp is part of our Skill Camp group of servers, which includes things like Word Camp, which is focused on novel writing and has novel classes every Saturday from 12 to 2. We also have our many other servers, which you can see here, including Film Camp, where we're starting a new filmmaking boot camp coming up in November. We also have Game Camp, where we just recently added game design, which is Wednesdays at 6 p.m. There's new coding classes coming up on Code Camp. Plenty of stuff coming up on the pipeline. Oh, I thought I had a slide of everything coming up. That's okay. So you can check the Events tab within the Script Camp server by clicking that small calendar in the top left of the window. And if you're watching on one of our other sites like Twitch or Twitter or Discord, this is Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Kick, Facebook, or something like that, then you can come join us by going to scriptcamp.net and clicking that link in the top right to join our Discord community. Everything is totally free unless you sign up for membership. Signing up for membership will get you access to the complete boot camps and the larger class series and the members labs and things like this, as well as member-exclusive chat channels and full access to video library, which includes recordings of all previous events. Okay, this is me. I think most folks here know me by now pretty well. I'm mostly focused on features, though I do have a TV credit for Creepshow, and I've recently set up a couple new features in Hollywood and London. Nothing actually announceable yet. But in any case, I write a lot in the speculative world of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and thrillers. Things that have a good mix of speculative and realistic elements. I like a lot of different genres, and sci-fi has long been one of my favorites, especially in the world of books. So we are going to get into today what makes a good sci-fi show, and sort of that overview of just the practical steps that go into coming up with the pilot itself. We'll look at big idea and a couple new slides on this concept of scope and the scale of your idea, and which ideas are better suited to different levels of exploration per episode. We have everything from the smaller scope, where on an episode-by-episode basis, we will introduce some new speculative element that will be resolved, or the conflict related to it will be solved by the end of that episode. Or we also have the much larger scope shows where they might revolve around just one single piece of speculative technology that takes many, many episodes to actually fully unspool the ramifications of. So we'll look at sci-fi topics and subgenres. We have a new exercise to jumpstart premises based on some common conventions for sci-fi premise. These things like, I'm a cop who polices X, or I'm a bounty hunter who looks for X. And then we can mix and match that with different sorts of speculative tech to come up with some brand new premises that remix things that we may already sort of be familiar with. And then today we will also have time for loglines and pitches. If you are working on a sci-fi show of your own, maybe you have some questions about it, or you're not entirely sure if it's working yet, or maybe you have a few different sci-fi ideas that you're trying to settle on, now would be a day that you would be able to get that feedback and get pointed, hopefully in the right direction, and be given a boost to get where you need to go. Okay, so this is a voice channel, meaning that you have to unmute to speak aloud. For the most part, I will be calling out times where we will be asking for folks to speak up, and I'll be checking the text chat for comments, just because there's a lot of folks here. So in the text chat, or you can find that, I would say, by mousing over the Classroom channel on the left-hand side of your Discord window. You'll find that small white word bubble that says Open Chat, and if you click that, you can access the text and leave your questions and comments as we go. I see a question already. What's the difference between sci-fi and sci-fantasy? Is Star Wars a sci-fi movie, or is it fantasy? Okay, so the big difference, let's just tackle that question right off the bat. So the big difference is that, as opposed to fantasy, sci-fi will feature speculative technologies and things like this that have that veneer of real science to them. They have some sort of actual logical explanation, at least within that world, that seems to be present that would serve to explain what's going on. Oftentimes this takes the form of technology that is not currently possible, but could be possible someday, or maybe inevitably will be possible someday in some cases, where we're picking things that are actually within our world, and then we're exploring more like the ramifications of things that already exist. Whereas fantasy is about taking things, or the speculative elements that are not possible and will never be possible. So you can see even some series which might, over time, shift from one direction to the other, because Star Wars, initially the Force is this very mysterious kind of magical thing, but as of Phantom Menace, we learn that it can actually be measured and quantified by cells in your blood, So that is kind of a strange example of something going from more mysterious and fantastical to more scientifically based over time. And as well as the prequels featuring more science-based elements like mass cloning and things like this, we could almost look at the prequels as more science fiction than the original trilogy. So, but ultimately, the fact that they have space wizards and witches shooting lightning at each other and stuff like this does push Star Wars from pure sci-fi into more of science fantasy. So it's got elements of both. Nothing has to actually be really rigidly defined in terms of one or the other. Lots of series will feature, they will pick and choose aspects of both speculative things that could be possible and some stuff that will never be possible. And sometimes they blur the lines between them and they ask questions like, well, could this one day be possible if we knew new facts or if we had access to different technologies that we had no way of knowing about or things like this? So, yeah, sometimes those lines do get blurred, but ultimately we're going to draw that distinction at sci-fi is about things that have at least that apparent veneer of true science behind them, and they could at least potentially one day become possible. Whereas you can have a fantasy story about a bear that joins the army and, grows 9 tentacles, and each tentacle has its own personality, and they, become a superhero or something like that. Whereas in a science fiction, we might have to have, I don't know, some kind of reason why that happens. We'd have to know, okay, it was a biomutant that was affected by the gamma radiation. Maybe comic books are a good place to kind of look at where those distinctions are drawn pretty carefully, too. Or I should say, sometimes carefully, sometimes in a very slapdash way. Because it's like the Hulk, he turns into a giant green guy because of why? Gamma rays? Okay, even that alone is enough for us to say, all right, gamma rays are an actual thing. I don't think they really turn someone into a rage monster, but like the fact that it at least purports to explain what it's doing through scientific principle means that it is sci-fi. Kind of regardless of how plausible it actually is. Superheroes especially, they blur the lines all the time, and we have even characters on the same team, one of whom is a wizard and one of whom is a robot. So you have, you can draw freely in the world of comic books from any and all of those things at any time. Or in the world of anime, even more broadly, you can say, I have an alien, a wizard, a robot, and a 9,000-year-old demon all on the same team, and it doesn't really break suspension of disbelief at all. Okay, let's open to this question, just what makes a good sci-fi show? And I will open this to the floor in just a second. I'll just start out by saying, for me, what I'm looking for is primarily strong characters with compelling conflict, of course, like the things that we're always looking for in a show. But if we dig just a little deeper, I'd say sci-fi makes us think about topics in new ways. They make us think about the ways that we live, the technology that we use, or that we might one day use. And ultimately, sci-fi, one of its greatest strengths is that although it sort of purports to be about the future or speculative futures, like alternate ways that the timeline could go, it's very much about right now and like reflecting on what we have and what the trends are, like the technological trends or social trends and where they seem to be going. So although we do sort of set these things often in futuristic worlds, they are about the current day. So I like shows especially that make us think of current social topics in interesting new ways that we may not have before. Questions like, does AI have rights, or should it? Or at one point, will it be advanced enough that we have to respect the sanctity and dignity of artificial intelligence? Well, that's an interesting question that's raised in shows like Westworld or Caprica. So yeah, I really like those questions that make us look at current important topics in the zeitgeist, and they kind of allow us to access those topics in a more fun format, but that also stretches our brains to think of how those things could actually evolve or change the way that we really live. Okay, what about you guys? What makes a good sci-fi show to you? What kinds of things are you looking for? Feel free to either use that text chat or you can unmute and speak up.
I think it's interesting premise, interesting tech, and interesting characters.
Yep, those are great for sure. All the fundamentals.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like some super advanced technology, especially if it could be possible. I tend to like that than something that's just pure fantasy. I mean, I like fantasy, but if we're just talking about sci-fi, those are the things that make it really good to me.
Awesome. Go ahead, Luke.
I like really heavy-handed symbolism and philosophy So there's some of that in Star Trek, but at the show Devs, Alex Garland, that's I love that kind of stuff. I could eat that stuff up all day.
Interesting. So you prefer to sort of really... Sorry, I'll get to that other question in just 1 second, but I just want to clarify with Luke. So you're actually sort of drawn to the really heavy-handed, maybe you would say on the surface, symbolism and messages?
Yeah, metaphor, messages, symbolism, things that have double meanings, things like big questions. Like I like sci-fi that asks really big questions that can't necessarily be answered.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
So I think like you always like in terms of like practicality, you have to appeal to the like kind of the barbarian in you. So it's like a cool weapon, right? And a cool method of transportation, which is like the basis of like most popular sci-fi shows. Like you have a web shooter and a web swing. You have a TARDIS and a screwdriver. It's almost like the ideas are really great and nice, right? But that only serves a specific audience, a thinking audience. But if you really want to appeal to everyone, you want to appeal to their caveman in them.
Okay, yeah, rule of cool. You like the fun stuff, the cool spaceships, the cool lightsabers.
Yeah, if we're talking about fundamental, right? Fundamentally, you need something that travels, right? That's really cool. And you need something that solves problems, usually by killing them.
Right. Yeah, for sure. These are the things that make the great toys that the kids will go and buy from your show, or the great video game that they'll make adapted from your show.
I like interesting moral dilemmas that might arise from just one particular sci-fi tech. It's like branches out into multiple different kinds of ways that it would affect people and the choices they make.
Definitely. Moral dilemmas.
I like
Go ahead.
I like anti-utopian settings that test the character's moral.
The settings, great, yeah. So especially anti-utopian settings might draw our current social paradigms into a different light. They might ask questions like, is this really a society we want to build, or is this a warning sign as to what could happen?
Dune is my favorite. I mean, it's got so many different layers of political, religious, ecological, all mixed together.
Okay, sounds like you're a big world-building fan, and sci-fi is a great genre for building a different world. Anyone else? Okay, we can leave it there for now. So, these are all great suggestions and ideas of things that various aspects of a science fiction show that draw and keep our attention. And when you're designing a show, you can kind of start at any point you want. There's like certain questions that need to be resolved and certain fields that need to be filled out. And you can start at the end, you can start in the middle, or you can start at the kind of beginning. But if we were to lay it all out in just very practical steps, I think we'll look at these, like 10 individual steps. So to begin with, I think that you can start by finding the topic and the big idea of your show. So the topic being just the sort of area of tech that you are basing your world around, and the big idea being the more specific concept within that umbrella that you would then be digging deeper into for the rest of the show. And then you can determine the scope and continuity format from there. So once you have your idea, you can decide, okay, do I want to look at a bunch of interlinked but kind of unrelated aspects of this technology, or do I want to take one more complicated technology and spend multiple years, or theoretically multiple years of seasons just getting to the bottom of that one thing? So we will get into how to determine the scope and what sorts of stories are served better by different scopes of narrative in just the next couple slides. So after you've determined that, you can go into your story engine, and that's going to be part of just what makes this feel like it would be a show rather than a movie or a miniseries. And that's going to look at things like, what are the dynamics between the characters here? If there is some larger problem to be solved, are we sure that there are enough obstacles in the way that make it feel like this wouldn't just be resolved within a couple episodes or one single season? Like, is there enough opposition and a strong enough or difficult enough uphill climb in order for the characters to finally reach that eventual complicated goal? Or if you're doing that more limited scope and continuity format, does it feel like there's enough different ideas within this one larger concept that every week we could get something new and different and unique? So those are going to form your story engine. That's not one answer to what the engine is, but it's like a combination of all of those elements that make it feel like this could persist for potentially years of seasons. We will then go from there into your characters. So you will figure out who is this about, who is my main cast, who is the protagonist, who are the antagonists, what are the central relationships, and how do those dynamics actually function? Are there antagonists within the team of protagonists, as in who doesn't get along well, who does get along well, who is helping whom, who's on whose side? All those basic questions that set up the essential momentum of your story world, like where are the main characters going, what are they trying to do, and what is standing in the way. The series and pilot loglines will also help you clarify, first of all, one single sentence that describes what we're doing in the entire show, or what kind of action or what types of situations are going to unfold repeatedly throughout the entire show, as opposed to your pilot logline, which is going to be one sentence that expresses just what happens in this very first episode. So it could be that your character is now joining a kind of story world that was existing before, and they're kind of learning the ropes of it, the fish out of water kind of approach. Or it could be that within your pilot episode, we are still just being dropped within a story world that has been going for a while, and we don't really need a fish out of water character because we're just going to be picking up as we go along, trying to figure out what's going on and learn like how this world functions from being dropped in the middle of it. So you can clarify either in your pilot and series logline how those things are going to work and what essentially is the first step or the first challenge or the first chapter that we have to get through before your characters can get to the challenges presented by the grander premise. So once we have those loglines, you can start to break your pilot into beats. Those beats are going to be structural notes that will help you get from point A to point Z, and also make sure that you are adding challenges and dynamic shifts, and making sure that your characters are being tested and that you are exploring the elements that you've introduced to the fullest extent that you can within the time frame or within the format. Those beats will help you expand into a one-sheet. The one-sheet is kind of an optional step. It's quite useful if you want to get detailed feedback on your story before you go to pages. Go to pages being that term that means you go from outlining and planning to actually executing the pages, writing the dialogue and blocking the scenes and everything else. So you don't absolutely need to do a one sheet, but it's really helpful to learn, and like throughout your screenwriting career, you will just have to write a lot of them. So I recommend learning how and not being afraid of it and not feeling overwhelmed by it. A one sheet is really useful to simply communicate the story in a way that's easy to read for other people, that is not going to rely on jargon or shorthand within your pre-writing documents. So I recommend the one sheet, but even if not, then next you're going to move up into your scene cards outline, and that's going to be an expansion of your story beats into more concrete and specific details for each scene that include not only a little title for each scene, but also the pages that each scene will take place on. So you're kind of allocating the number of pages that you will require for each story beat. And therefore, you're going to be able to build out a really clear roadmap of what happens on every page of your script before you even start writing pages. And then once you have a really clear scene card outline, you're ready to get going. And you'll go to pages, meaning that you'll start writing a couple pages a day, maybe like 2 or 3 beats a day. I recommend maybe writing about 3 to 5 pages a day for the most part. And once you have all this outlining done and you have all of your plot beats really nailed down, it should be easier to, in fact, have a consistent output and get through that revision guide, or I'm sorry, that scene card outline at a reasonable clip. And you should be able to, now that you're not worrying about what actually has to happen, you're only worrying about how to execute it on the page. It will just help you get to the end faster and more efficiently. Okay, that is the big overview of what it takes to write a sci-fi pilot, or really any pilot, but we have a couple other extra considerations in terms of sci-fi, meaning we have to determine the big idea and the scope and scale of that. But before we go any deeper into these, let me just stop and ask for any questions on the overview of writing a pilot. If there's no questions, we will move on. So let's get into big idea. A lot of why we come to sci-fi, I think a few folks even mentioned in there, in our initial discussion, is for the concepts and for the technology and for these speculative elements. Speculative meaning we are just imagining something that is not currently possible. With sci-fi, though, the expectation is that it may one day be possible, or perhaps is even possible in some format right now, but it will become even more possible, or it will change in some fashion later on that we are exploring in our show. This is going to set your world apart from reality in some kind of way and guide what your characters are doing. It comprises a central element of the threat or obstacle, the way your character must overcome it, or both. Think of something like Men in Black, right? I know that's not a show, it's a movie, but it's like this. All of the sci-fi in this relates to aliens. And the aliens are both the enemy. We have some aliens that are allies, and we use alien technology to combat the alien threats as well. So it's not like we, although I guess in the later movies they really do pile on other stuff, don't they? Like time travel in the third or fourth. Is there 4 of them? There's 4. Yeah, they add time travel and stuff like this later on, so you can see how the scope kind of creeps out and maybe gets a little too big. But in any case, for at least the first 2 movies, the big idea is there are aliens that live among and with humans. We're sort of asking the question, if this thing existed, or if technology advanced to this degree, what conflicts would it create or solve? And by solving some, it might obviously create others. So, for instance, the show Altered Carbon, the subject matter is consciousness upload and posthumanism, so moving people's brains from machine to machine. But the big idea is this concept called sleeves, which are like human bodies that we can grow and then transfer your brain in between. So in that way, just given that one change from how humanity is different in the future, we can imagine all kinds of interesting topics or discussions that relate from that. Like the entire paradigm of life and death is dramatically altered in a world where you can move your body or move your mind from one body to another. We've got a couple more here, so I just want to kind of highlight the difference between topic and big idea. So the topic is the area of discussion that we are in. So criminal justice is like a pretty big topic. But the big idea in Minority Report is the thing that we have come up with to explore that topic, this concept of pre-crime, which is a police agency that arrests criminals before they even do the crime. In Ready Player One, VR and social media is the subject matter, or is the area that we are discussing, but the big idea is the Oasis, which is this worldwide metaverse. Something that Facebook was actually trying to, I guess, be inspired by and create their own sort of metaverse that was somehow not as compelling as the one in this story. In Severance, we have this topic of corporate life, corporate work life. And the big idea is this procedure called severance, which is an operation that separates an employee's mind into 2 distinct halves. We have a work version and an outside version that are essentially 2 separate people that have no shared memories between them. So one does not remember being the other one at all. And every time you go into work, you become that version of the work version of you. Every time you leave work, you become the normal version of you. So I hope that's clear how the difference between topic and big idea is drawn, or the lines between those things are drawn. The topic is like the much broader subject matter of it's like the type of thing we are exploring, and the big idea is your specific, tangible way of exploring that thing. Okay, let's get into scope. So to begin with, some shows revolve around small and self-contained speculative elements, while others are going to explore these big monumental premises that will require years to fully unravel. Just because a show lasts a long time doesn't mean that it is necessarily large scope. We could have a small scope show that lasts for many years, like think of X-Files, or early X-Files, for instance, which was kind of Monster of the Week format that focused on isolated paranormal events that would be resolved within the episode, almost just like spooky Law and Order, or Law and Order, but it's a ghost, it's an alien, or it's a lizard monster, or it's a fungus. Things like this. Over the course of the show, later seasons do expand the scope and present a kind of endgame payoff for all of this. But at least for the first few seasons, you can see how this was essentially a Monster of the Week. So anytime we're working with Thing of the Week, we are in the world of smaller scope, except in those instances where the Things of the Week start to culminate, or they start to add up to something. That's kind of like your Gravity Falls or your Night Vale or something like this, where it's like all these separate mysteries actually have the same source. These shows ultimately, though, are going to focus on one concept per episode, and the premise is going to be fully explored within that episode, perhaps even in anthological format where we don't even need to follow the same characters from show to show, but we easily could. That's going to be shows like Black Mirror. That's an anthology in which each episode centers on a different tech or concept like social media or advanced AI or something like this, and explores the immediate ramifications within that one episode, but they can really dig as deep as they want into that one concept within 1 hour. And then by the next episode, we are on to something new. There is nothing carried over from the preceding episodes, except to some extent this concept of the memory cookies, which they kind of actually touch on in more than one, but that's kind of a fluke. And then we have a show like Eureka. I don't know if that many people remember this, but my brother and I used to watch this all the time from like 2006 to 2012, I think. This was a show that's like small town sheriff moves into wacky town full of science people. It's like a town of all the most brilliant inventors and scientists in the entire world. And every week some wacky thing goes wrong, like the bubble scientist made a giant bubble machine that's trapping all the people in bubbles. Or the I don't know what we call it, the growth hormone scientist creates a serum that makes all the dogs gigantic. Or, crazy kind of like comic booky madness like that. And then the small town fish out of water sheriff has to essentially use his grounded, folksy persona and skills to resolve the problems that these wacky eggheads have created yet again. Yet Better Off Ted is sort of a similar premise, although their main character is not really a fish out of water. That's comedic corporate science run amok, with each episode poking fun at some new tech innovation or moral dilemma raised by this new tech. It takes place in this kind of, I guess you would call it a screwball comedy type of tone, that takes place in a kind of an office type setting, but it's an office where people are creating these incredible inventions. And then I mentioned X-Files already, which starts out in Monster of the Week format, where our characters are FBI agents that are looking into unusual cases that eventually we find out there are some links between them and some grander conspiracies behind them that need to be fully taken down. Okay, so in terms of small scope shows, these are often based in status quo continuity format, where the events kind of reset after every episode. But even if not, they don't need to be that. The audience expectations do sort of reset between each episode, which means that they're open to a new concept each time we turn on the show, and we don't care too much about older concepts that have already been introduced. Whereas if you're writing a show with a larger scope, we would really expect the things you introduce early on to evolve and pay off in interesting ways in future episodes. We would sort of be wondering, hey, you introduced time travel in episode 3, we're on episode 5, why have we not mentioned the time travel again, or why haven't we used it again, or explored what it does more, or have somebody else try it, or examined it from a different angle, something like this. Whereas in a small scope show, we'll be like, oh no, we did time travel 2 episodes ago, we don't need to do it again, we're already on to cloning an AI. So let's look at large scope. Large scope shows present a massive overarching premise or mystery that slowly unspools over several seasons. And you can see I mentioned mystery a lot because TV works really well with this idea of a large question that we need to fulfill many, many steps to ultimately uncover, investigate, or lay bare in some way. Lost, for instance, is a complex narrative involving time travel and many other speculative elements. Time travel is just like the tip of the iceberg. And the mysteries of the island are slowly revealed, with each answer leading to more questions. Sometimes some might say too many questions. And that is a problem when it comes to large scale, is this idea of scope creep. Creep meaning that the scope changes over time to the point where creep kind of connotes that it gets too large. We kind of cover too many topics, or we start to ask too many questions to the point where we either forget what this was about to begin with, or it seems like the initial stakes no longer matter. Westworld is another show with big issues, huge questions relating to AI, consciousness, morality, and reality itself that are unpacked over multiple seasons, with so many twists and revelations that change our understanding of the central speculative tech over time, that by the end we're basically watching a different show. Altered Carbon, I already mentioned, having complex core ideas that require many episodes to dive into this central tech's impact on identity, power structures, and just the nature of humanity and life and death itself. With large scopes, these are ideal for long-form storytelling, as the central concept will really need time and space to unveil and reveal its full implications. So if you're writing a story where our understanding of one central tech will evolve over time, then you are better suited to a large-scope show, because with a small-scope show, the expectation would be that we introduce a new idea each episode, whereas with large, we're digging deeper into the same concepts, and we are kind of finding new angles to explore them. New dangers that they might pose, new benefits that we might get from them, new directions that they might be taking us, new opportunities or objectives that might result from exploring the same tech in a deeper way. Okay, any questions on this idea of scope and the scale of your premise?
I don't actually have a question. What if you have an idea, but the idea has been done before
That's a
in
good
a
question.
popular TV show?
Sure. Okay, so I have maybe like a little checklist you can use for this sort of question. We could ask, has it been done recently? Has it been done really well or with like a strong cultural impact of some kinds? And then you might ask, has it been done with the same style, tone, or approach? So that's 3 questions. If only one of those things is true, then you're probably fine. Like, yes, it's been done recently, but not with the same tone, style, or approach, and not of high quality. Or maybe it has been done of high quality, but not recently, and not in the same style. Or maybe it has been done in the same style, but not of high quality and not recently. So if you take those 3 things and you ask yourself, is only one of them true, then you should be fine. But if 2 of them are true, it's been done recently and really well, you probably don't want to like explore that in terms of writing something original. Writing something original is not always really the goal, though, especially when you're just starting out. Your goal is to write a bunch of scripts. So I wouldn't worry way too much about, has this been done before and should I bother with it if you're just getting going. You're trying to just get the mechanics of storytelling down, and I wouldn't let that limit you too much. But if you're getting, a couple scripts into your portfolio and maybe novelty and originality are really important to you, or you see yourself as a writer of big ideas and different ideas and things like that, then maybe you can use that kind of paradigm to figure out, has this been done, again, I'll give it to you one more time, with a high level of quality, recently, and with the same style, tone, or approach. So ask yourself, how many of those boxes are checked? Hope that helps. Okay, anyone else have a question on scope of big idea?
What if you sort of want a big idea, but you haven't found one for the particular project? Like my goofy little comedy sci-fi pilot. Like I kind of want there to be a big central question or theme or whatever, but I haven't quite landed on it.
You're talking about the one on the spaceship with the people trying to die?
Yeah, status quo, like I don't know, life and death. I can't quite figure it out.
Well, I think that one does have a central big idea, which is this premise that every time somebody dies, they get cloned against their will, basically, right? So there's
Right.
an unlimited number of backup copies of each person. You essentially can't die in this world unless the powers that be allow you to. Would you say that's about like the central core premise?
I think so. Yeah, you can't die. You also can't really climb the corporate ladder. Like there is no corporate ladder. It's just very divided by class at this point.
Right. So I think, yeah, if you dig deeper into that, there's plenty of implications that you can unspool potentially for future episodes, like the idea that people don't really age nowadays, or you would age until your clone dies, then you reset back to the age that you were. There's all kinds of like crazy stuff that could happen as a result, right? Imagine you could have a child, and then you die and you reset, and your child could get older than you are. Or all kinds of weird things that could happen as a result of simply having this clone reset backup system. It kind of reminds me of the role-playing game Paranoia, if you've heard of that one.
I've heard of it.
It's set in a world where everyone has I think there's 7 clones per person or something like that, which have the game mechanic effect of you have 7 lives, but the ramifications are you can be a lot more reckless and do a lot more crazy or wackier things because it's you always have a backup. So if you die, no big deal. In any case, it sounds like you do have a central big idea in your world, and the deeper that you dig into that, the more it will reveal and kind of give you. If you wanted to actually shrink the scope of your show, then I would actually focus on downplaying the importance of that concept and finding other stuff to explore too. But it sounds like you're already in the world of a big central idea, to me at least.
I at least have to explore it a little bit. So maybe I can give the protagonist, he's just old. He's just lost everyone he cares about or something, just to add to his core trauma.
Right. Yeah. I mean, your memory persists from clone to clone, right?
Right.
Right. So in essence, you could have people that were hundreds of years old, but that look just like anyone else, and they're desperately trying to find a way out of their mortal existence. But they could also have hundreds of years of knowledge.
Or I don't know if the memory does reset. Actually, it depends on when you had your backup made. So the memory is a weird one.
Okay.
Yes
well,
and
that
no.
might be worth exploring, at least, especially if you have a character that's kind of. You can see why it's sometimes helpful to have a fish out of water type character that's like, how does this work? And then everyone has to like explain it to them. But in any
Right.
case, you don't need to have that. You can always we can figure it out alongside, the core cast. Or if they already have it figured out, we can just pick it up as we go. I hope I answered your question. I forgot what the question was. Go ahead.
No, you answered it.
Okay, cool. Almost anything can be a big idea or a small idea, just depending on how deep you want to go into it. I think that'll be my definitive answer. Like you could have time travel just be a thing that comes up once in one episode, and then we're done with it. Or you could have an entire 10-season long show. Like think of something like Dark, right? Dark is a really, really complicated show that dives very, very deeply into time travel.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Might give me an excuse to watch it.
One of the more complicated shows I think I've seen. You need like a chart to follow all the characters.
Oh, I like that. It makes it more engaging.
Oh, you'll love it then. Any other questions
Isn't
on-
it Swedish
Go ahead.
or something?
It's German.
German.
And there's a dub and a subtitled, but I recommend the subtitled, of course. Okay, any other questions on big idea and scope?
I have a sci-fi adaptation I want to do, but I think the scope might be too big to boil down. But it's a feature, so maybe I'll save that for another session.
Okay, no problem. Yep, for those writing features, we do feature class Fridays from 6 to 8. I see there is a question from YouTube. Let's take a look. From Kwekwe Ghana. What if I have an animated idea? Does the approach change, and how would you go about doing a premise pilot for an original IP? Okay, two separate questions. So to begin with, when it comes to an animated show, you don't write these things terribly differently from a live-action show. It does sort of inform the choices you make in terms of like the visuals, the budget level, and things like that. You might imagine that it's just as much budget to show people talking in rooms as it would be to show spaceships blowing each other up. Obviously, there are other effects there, such as like the level of CGI you're using or things like that might increase that cost more. But for the most part, you might imagine that animated shows are going to be more visual. And they will have the license and the opportunity to do bigger visual things, huge armies, massive space battles, characters entering each other's dreams or minds or brains or going around inside like that. Or you might have, a story that takes place all underwater on an alien planet, and it features characters exploring the terrifying flora and fauna of this strange new place. I guess with animated shows, you have a little bit more freedom to show things that would be crazy expensive or difficult to render in live action. Those things might cause a producer reading a live action pilot to go, this is too expensive for us. Whereas if it's animated, you have almost the expectation that those things would be more visual. They would be bigger concepts. They would be a bit more, a larger scope to what we're seeing on screen. So I think with animated, you don't have to worry about the budget in the same way, and that allows you to pick a concept that just features more spectacle. So animated is definitely oriented towards that world of spectacle. And then your second question was, how would one go about doing a premise pilot for an original IP? Well, so every pilot is an original IP if it's not an adaptation of something. You own the copyright to whatever it is that you've created. So doing a premise pilot for an original IP would just be like writing a pilot for a sci-fi show, or whatever genre of show you want, and simply you're doing it not because you've been commissioned, not because you're adapting anything, but because it all comes from your own imagination. That automatically belongs to you, and that is entirely yours. So if you have some other IP that you are drawing from, like some book series you're writing or a video game you made or something like that, then you have full rights to that IP as well. Okay, let's see if there were any more questions in the chats. I think that's all for now. Thank you for those questions. And if you are watching on YouTube or Twitch or Facebook or something like this, we can see your questions. It sometimes just takes a minute for them to show up. Okay, let's look at some topics. And we will also look at some genres, subgenres, and terms to know. This will tie into our premise jumpstarts, which we will do a little later. And these are going to be things like, I'm a cop/bounty hunter of X, or I do heists on or using X. And we can use that to help kind of figure out some fun new ideas and pitch what that might be. But we will come to that in a bit. To begin with, let's look at some topics. And then at about the hour mark, so in about 10 to 15 minutes, 15, we will be looking at student loglines and premises. So if you have a logline or premise that you're working on, I would have it open in another tab and just be working on that and getting ready to share that pretty soon. When we ask to post those, I will call for you to post them in the chat all at the same time, and then I will look at them in the order that they were posted. So I would just have your sketchbook open and be typing, be finessing and finagling your whatever it is that you've got, whether it's a logline or just some basic expression of the premise. I would be getting it ready to at least a sentence or two that can tell us what it is that you're working on, if you want feedback, that is. If you don't want feedback, you don't have to share a single thing. Okay, let's look at some topics. So I've kind of oriented these, or I've ordered these at least a little bit from what I assess to be most popular to least popular. That's not to say anything is better than anything else. Like, obviously, there's new spins or angles that you can take on any of these that will make them feel fresh and original. But in any case, at the top, I think we have aliens, AI, and time travel, and dystopia. And these are going to be like the really, really big topics. Like, think of your blockbuster movies like Terminator, The Matrix, War of the Worlds, E.T., Arrival, things like this that are going to tie directly into aliens, AI, time travel, and dystopia. These are very well explored topics that you don't have to do as much explanation of in your stories because we're so used to seeing these in big movies and TV shows and everything else. So the nice thing about more explored topics is that we have more of a shared vocabulary related to that topic, meaning that you don't have to hold the audience's hand through the very essentials of what that thing is. We're very, very, very accustomed to dystopias, I think, in a post-80s, Blade Runner, Watchmen, Akira type worlds. I think we have seen every version of dystopias by now, but there's always something new. Like, it's not to say you can't have that. Even Star Wars is largely a dystopian setting, depending on the time period that you're in. We have alternate dimensions, or dimensional travel. Stranger Things, I think, is the biggest explorer, or the most mainstream explorer of this topic. And this is different from time travel in that we are looking at sort of characters traveling between alternate possible realities in the multiverse. Obviously, we have things like Everything Everywhere All at Once. In the Marvel world, in the world of Marvel, they have thoroughly explored this concept of multiverses by now. We have space travel or colonization, which is, I think should be tied probably with time travel and dystopia, but I wasn't doing ties on the list. In any case, space travel, colonization, interstellar, Avatar, aliens, anything featuring characters moving from one planet to the other, usually on spaceships, but sometimes with teleporters or space elevators or other things like that. And colonization, meaning we're trying to find new homes or habitate new worlds, terraform them, make them habitable for either human or sometimes aliens are terraforming other planets for themselves, like in War of the Worlds. Mutation. This is going to be something that often skews towards the softer sci-fi world because when we imagine the world mutation, or when we imagine the word mutation, we can kind of imagine it does almost anything. Mutation is kind of just your cells and genes do something wacky and unusual. In the world of X-Men, for instance, mutation can mean you can shoot fire, or it could mean you can control the weather, or it could mean you're a giant green guy, or it could mean that you are... I always think it's kind of funny, especially in X-Men 2, where one of the main paradigms is, should we work on a cure that can get rid of our powers? And Rogue is like, yes, we definitely should. And Storm's like, no, your powers belong to you. That's a core part of your identity you can never change. And it's like, Storm, you're a goddess who can shoot lightning. Rogue kills people that she touches, and you're telling her that she should not cure herself because her mutation is the thing that makes her unique and beautiful? Like, come on. Like, sometimes if you play a concept very loosely, it will start to seem a little silly. But then again, in the world of comic books, like, you kind of have a lot of license to be silly, I would say. But Storm really should not be lecturing mutants on how they should all keep their powers, when most of them have huge drawbacks, and hers has 0 drawbacks. We have Apocalypse, or Post-Apocalypse. I think we've also seen a million versions of this. But this is going to be everything from your Deep Impact, which is on the more realistic, grounded side of things, where we imagine what if an event happened that would really cataclysmically affect a lot of life on Earth, versus Mad Max, where we say, okay, after this cataclysmic thing has happened, where would society go? What kind of weird and crazy new people would emerge? What would they be up to? What would those societies, clans, and conflicts look like? This is your Fallout. You know, we have a ton of post-apocalyptic shows and movies. The Road. This is just like very well explored nowadays. Some series even transition from pre-apocalypse to post-apocalypse within the same franchise, like the Resident Evil movies, which the first one is I guess you'd say pre-apocalyptic, and every other Resident Evil movie is post. We have virus and germs. This is a touchy subject nowadays. I wonder why. So I recommend staying away from virus and germ stuff for the most parts. We did see a kind of an odd post-COVID resurgence of these types of stories for a bit, maybe because people felt like we kind of had to engage with it, and that would be stuff like Station 11 on HBO, which I was like, oh, we're just doing COVID shows now? It kind of blew my mind. So it's not to say that you absolutely can't, but there will be certain roadblocks and certain people that will simply not want to engage with or make something related to diseases right now, so just tread lightly. VR in cyberspace. Matrix and Ready Player One. I think we've seen a lot of this in big movies, especially because VR and AI and things like this are becoming more mainstream and popular. I mean, it's not unusual to find people that have VR headsets just lying around the house. And cyberspace is like an extension or extrapolation of the internet as we understand it. That's kind of like the Ready Player One version, where it's like it's the internet meets a giant MMORPG all in one, and that's all just kind of like the virtual world that exists parallel to the real world. I think Digimon also had this, if I remember correctly. I don't believe that Digimon can go into the real world. Somebody might need to clarify that for me. Even Pokemon have that kind of VR element to them. You can keep Pokemon as digital files within your Pokédex somehow. I don't know why. We need a Pokemon expert to explain that to us. We have Uplifting, which is not as explored. Planet of the Apes is probably the biggest example of this, which is a big franchise even now. Folks often forget, oh yeah, there's a huge Planet of the Apes franchise still ongoing right now. But in any case, this is basically taking animals or less intelligent beings and giving them greater intelligence. Potentially lots of interesting places to go there. I'm not quite sure even how to weigh in on this one. I think that we see this come and go in phases. I think in the 60s and 70s we saw a lot of this speculation in short stories and novels. But nowadays, there's not quite as much of this on TV, so I don't know, maybe there's something there. And then last, this is one of the lesser explored ones, we have scientific predestination or divination. The examples I've drawn from are Minority Report, which there's a movie based on the short story, and also there is a procedural TV show on Fox. And then we have Devs, which was mentioned earlier today, and the movie called Knowing with Nicolas Cage, where there's like a science reason why he can see the future. I forget why. Okay, so there's a lot of topics there, a lot that you can do with these things. And you might imagine, well, hang on. First of all, let me ask, did I miss anything? Or maybe some subtopic within these that I've missed? What do you guys think?
Space opera?
Space opera
it probably
to me
goes
is
under
kind
space
of like
travel.
Yeah, it's a genre that blends together a few of these topics. Space opera usually involves space travel and colonization. Often it involves either time travel or alternate dimensions as well. Often there is really advanced AI, and there's almost always aliens. So space opera kind of like can pick and choose from a buffet of all of these things.
All right.
Wait, did you talk about mind manipulation and memory? I thought you did, and then I
think I skipped it over in the explanation, but it is right there on the list. Yeah. So we have memory and mind manipulation. That would be things like Inception, The Cell, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Anything where we are editing people's memories, going into those memories, or interacting within those memories, taking people's minds and turning them into something else, like we're embodying their mind in a robot or in a computer or something like that. The movie called The Final Cut with Robin Williams was kind of an interesting exploration of like memory manipulation as well.
Did you cover like speculative technology, like I don't know, the book Micro, shrinking technology? What are the implications of all that?
I guess I didn't cover that specifically. No. Do you want to talk about that or explain what some different shows or movies that have explored that?
Trying to think of a show that explores that. I guess Severance has the severance technology, but that's really more about memory mind manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
But Micro is a book that has pretty realistically portrays the problems of like and benefits that a human would have if they were really small, like the microscopic world. There's like microscopic nanomachines. There's I don't know, things like surface tension become a big problem. You can fall pretty much from any height, just like an insect. But there's other problems. It's really interesting.
That is cool.
So,
It's like
so downsizing is ramifications of a technology with Matt Damon. It's where you shrink yourself in order to save more money.
I view that more as like a metaphor. It's not really realistic about the shrinking. It's just like an allegory for society.
Right.
We live in a society.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids would be a movie that explores this premise as well.
Yeah, I can't think of a show.
There's a TV show of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, except in the show, it's more like Thing of the Week. It's like Wacky Invention of the Week, and each episode is called like, Honey, I blank did crazy things. So it's called like, Honey, I broke the internet, or like, Honey, I got trapped in a computer, or like, they all have episode titles like that. It's pretty stupid.
What about Black Mirror? I mean, it's an anthology, but there are lots of speculative technology episodes.
Yeah, Black Mirror kind of just draws from all of these. Like, you never know what you're going to get on any given episode. Though they do largely skew towards AI and social media.
Definitely.
And some of the best episodes.
Yeah, I don't have any good examples.
That's all right. Thank you for those suggestions. Anyone else want to tell me anything I didn't include on the list that maybe you're a big fan of some sci-fi topic that I forgot about?
Oh, what does it mean to be human? Like androids, humanity versus machine.
Yeah, I guess we're sort of looking at so we already have AI on the list, but this is kind of a nuanced version of that. It's kind of like the soul. Like, what is the human soul? Is there a scientific soul? What does it look like? Who has one and who doesn't have one? Yeah, these kind of concepts of like technology and identity. Gattaca was an interesting movie that explored identity and genetics as well.
Badger mentioned mecha. You didn't really like that is definitely a genre.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, good point. That's that I guess maybe that we would call the topic area that would be sort of like military sci-fi. So like using the central speculative tech as a means to kill the enemy as much as possible.
Also, post-humanism. I have a lot to say about that one. That's not really a genre that I think has been adequately explored yet.
Yeah, post-humanism.
The singularity stuff. I mean, if Johnny Depp can't make that famous, then I don't think it's possible.
That's transhumanism. That's a different thing.
Can you explain the difference to us?
Transhumanism is like, what if humanity and machines sort of like merged into like a new life form? Post-humanism, in the way I view it, is like, what is the universe like post-humanity? Like the human civilization has gone extinct, and like now what do we do?
Oh, okay. Almost basically like there's Guide to the Galaxy post-human because they destroy the Earth in the first act.
Potentially, it's more like speculative. I don't know. There's lots. There's a space opera book I really love that also gets into post-humanism. It's like human beings have divided into separate species and like conquered the galaxy in these different, like, I guess it has mutation, it has space opera, but they're no longer human. Like nobody is human anymore. They're like a different species.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, Pandorum also kind of explores this concept.
Red Rising, quite interesting in terms of exploration, similar to that, where the human species has differentiated itself genetically into different groups, and those groups have a hierarchy.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's like a eugenics-based Mars type society where the reds are on the bottom, and then you have the golds that are like the genetically superior class that are in charge of everything.
Yeah, that it was actually it's an interesting story because the way the three environments, right, where he goes from being, in one environment. I don't want to spoil it for people, but where he goes from the one environment and his world expands out, and there's the second environment where he goes through the sort of sea change, so to speak, and then that third environment where the final conflict happened. Each environment is so different.
Yeah, it reminds me of The Expanse.
In terms of its scope.
The Expanse is a similar story world where people are like starting to adapt differently to being only ever born in space. So like they have different, like if they ever go to Earth, they basically can't move because their muscles are like not strong enough to move in the Earth atmosphere or within the Earth gravity or things like that. It is cool to think how after hundreds of years on other planets or even in orbit, how would humanity's physiology and psychology and religion and all these things change over time. Lots of cool ideas here. We'll also look at, I do want to get to your guys' ideas soon. We will do that just after these slides on genre. And let me check the chat really quick. Somebody mentioned time dilation. Oh yeah, time dilation, that sort of being the idea, like an Interstellar, where the faster you get to the speed of light, the slower that time passes outside of your vehicle. The faster the time advances out of the vehicle, the slower it advances for you. We also saw that in the original Planet of the Apes. Farscape, Charlie mentions. Yeah, that's kind of the fun thing about Farscape is that there's it's like Dark Crystal in space. It's like, look at all these space goblin puppets. Great. Okay, thank you for all these ideas, guys. So within our, we mentioned the big idea, which is your specific take or your specific thing in your world, and it's your way of addressing or accessing that topic. We also have genres, which certain topics might fit better into some of these than others, but then again, at the end of the day, you can also explore whatever topic you want using whatever tone or genre lens that appeals to you. You can do like a grindhouse show about time travel, or you can do a very cerebral romantic drama about time travel. It's entirely up to you. We have horror, like the really common sci-fi sort of subgenres or takes are horror thriller. That's going to be stuff like your Dark Matter, or like there's a new Alien TV show coming out, which is being done by Noah Hawley, which is going to definitely be sci-fi horror, right? We have space opera action adventure, which is going to be Star Trek, The Expanse, Doctor Who, and your many Mandalorians and various Star Wars shows. In terms of mystery, we usually have a central question that is linked to the speculative technology, like Severance. It's like, what is this company actually doing and why? And also Dark, which we mentioned, it has a really complicated, twisty mystery involving disappearing kids and time travel and a mind-blowing amount of stuff. And we have drama as well, which is going to be things a little bit more like Handmaid's Tale or Under the Dome, where they are dramatic situations that take place in an alternate setting, and they might feature the use of some speculative technology, but usually not for big stunts, action-adventure set pieces, or scare sequences. We also might have comedy as well, which might be things like Better Off Ted or Futurama. You can definitely use sci-fi for comedic effect as well. What's that one? Resident Alien is a recent sitcom with an alien that people tend to like a lot. Or what is it? Even the Morks and the Alfs of preceding years have been sitcoms with sci-fi elements, so nothing wrong with doing comedy either. I think it's one of the main genres people think of for sci-fi. I'm not going to read through the whole list of subgenres, but I will at least display it here. And this might consist of a couple things which weren't on the bigger list. We have alternate history, Man in the High Castle, Watchmen, or For All Mankind, which is a recent favorite show of mine, which kind of takes place in the past, but imagining that some things happen differently that may have led to sci-fi or to technology advancing in different ways than it really did. We have your cyberpunk, dystopia, farce, military sci-fi, everything else you can just see here on this slide. And then last, I won't go through all of these, but we will just leave you on this list of genre terms or ideas to be familiar with. I think some of these are very self-explanatory, like post-apoc means post-apocalyptic. Some of these you may not be familiar with, and we can talk about more later in this class if there's time. We mentioned a few of these, like uplifting. FTL stands for faster than light, and usually refers to spaceships that have an engine or other technology that allows them to kind of warp between systems or move very quickly between large distances. Okay, we're not going to do the idea jump starts just yet. We've already talked about the scope and scale of the big idea. Premise versus status quo we've touched on. I will just recap quickly. Premise is more like a long movie, where the pilot is the first chapter of a much longer story that needs a long time to resolve, whereas status quo is more like there's a thing of the week. There's a new thing every week, and we sort of reset. So this is going to be like the Westworld versus Futurama. And the story engine is this amalgamation of several different elements that sort of sum up to create conflict in your show that will sustain many years of episodes, many different seasons over time, where they feel like it would. You don't have to actually write those episodes. You shouldn't really be writing anything besides the pilot. But in any case, reading the pilot should make it very clear what your engine is. Even by reading the logline, we can kind of clarify what that engine is. Ultimately, this is going to fuse your character's story world and situations together to continually generate interesting, recurring conflict. A strong story engine could hypothetically suggest hundreds of hours of TV. So we're asking questions like, what's unique about the characters? What is the dynamic between them, or what conflicts kind of persist within the team itself? What do they want? Why do we want to watch them want or pursue it? What is the world of the show? What are the types of people that inhabit that world, and how do new people intersect with the main characters? These are all just things that might sum up to ultimately kind of create this amorphous story engine. Okay, we can come back to this if there's more questions on this, but I will just give some suggestions as to story engine. You might start with profession. That's a really common place to start in terms of sci-fi, where it's like, we're solving crimes related to this technology, or treating patients or helping people related to this technology. You might have a unifying goal or problem, like we're fighting together against this thing or using this thing. There may be rivalries, arguments, or alliances that help us cope with the setting that we're in, or the various challenges of that setting. Or it might revolve around the battle for power or control of a business, kingdom, institution, or some other thing that features that speculative element. We could do a show about a family, shows in a kind of school type setting. We won't go way too into these at the moment because I've gone over these in previous classes, but in any case, you've got lots of options where it comes to how to present your show as a unified and cohesive series of situations, but ultimately it helps to have something tying all the characters together, whether it's the job, those family connections, politics, the nature of the conflict they're in, the organization they're in, or something like that. Just some reason that keeps them working together, living together, or whatever else. If it feels like they're all in separate shows, there may be something wrong with your story engine. Okay, let's open to any questions before we start sharing ideas. Any questions based on what we've talked about today? Okay, if there's no questions, let's open it to ideas. So you can either post log lines in the chats, or if you don't have a log line, you just want to share about your idea, or maybe speak aloud and brainstorm regarding it, you can just type in the chat, tell us whatever it is that you have, and we will take them in the order that they are posted. Here's just a good template starting place for your pilot logline. You don't always have to use exactly this, but at least try to answer these major questions. Remember, the pilot logline is just what happens in this very first chapter. So if there's a thing of the week, we need to know what the thing of the first week is. And it's usually going to be formed in the framed like, when or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. If you don't format it in this exact order, at least try to answer those questions. Okay, let's open the floor. So I'm going to check the chat. I see one from Megan, one from Arthur, one from Luke. Thank you, guys. Let's start with Megan.
Okay.
All right. So why don't you read out what you've got for us? I'll paste it into a document so we can see it.
Yeah, it's not at the best of luck lines now, but it's a rough idea. 1 to 20. This is the pilot, and then the next series. Assuming it becomes a TV show, otherwise it might be a novel. And it would be a limited TV series. When a 25th century tattooist / aesthetic geneticist fuses illegal alien DNA, she and her client must flee a hostile alien force. The show logline would be when a 21st century tattooist / aesthetic geneticist and her client steal alien technology. They uncover a plot to destroy humanity and must devise a method to stop them and save Earth.
All right, thanks for that. Wait, can I quickly ask, which one is the series and which one is the pilot?
The first one is the pilot.
Oh, okay.
The first one is her putting the DNA into him, and then the aliens coming after them and them fleeing Earth. And later, she realizes that he had it done so that he could steal proprietary alien technology. And when they steal the technology, that's when they find out that these particular aliens are not to trade with.
Okay, and did you have a title?
Altered might be the title. Don't know yet.
Okay. Okay, let's read them back. So, series: a 25th century tattooist / aesthetic geneticist and her client steal alien technology. They uncover a plot, and then they uncover a plot to destroy humanity and must devise a method to stop them. Who's them? The aliens?
The alien force.
The aliens.
Yeah.
Okay. To stop them and save Earth. All right. What is an aesthetic geneticist?
I imagine that, sorry. Trying to grab breakfast at the same time I talk with you. I'm imagining what my job would be like in the 25th century or 26th century sort of thing. So the idea that there would be sort of tattoo shops at spaceports, but that the tattoo shops would involve things like cyborg and or genetic modification, not just. So she's an aesthetic geneticist. She doesn't go in and fix, your hereditary genetic problems, nearsightedness, things like that. She's not that kind of geneticist. She does things like fuse genes into your DNA so that you can, in her particular case, can alter the color and patterns of her skin because she's got like squid and chameleon DNA fused into her. So she can consciously change her skin to anything, from, because she's an artist, the more creative you are, obviously, the more you can imagine a thing, the better you can do that. But yeah, she can basically chameleon herself.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
But
so, go ahead.
There are different types of things. Like people could have plants grafted to them, or you could have live rose growing out of your shoulder, that kind of.
Okay,
Not just like a rose tattoo. Literally, anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So she just does futuristic body modifications that are mostly for aesthetic purposes. You're saying, like, for the looks and for the...
Right, and rather than biomechanical, she's genetic special.
I see. Okay. So it's kind of just tough to grasp a concept if you're introducing several things at once, and especially by telling us that your character is this / this. It just kind of is difficult to fully wrap your head around what that means. I wonder if there's one term that would sort of encompass all of this, like a body modifier or something like that. It's always better to just describe your character by one term rather than presenting alternate different terms that we're supposed to kind of understand how these things are connected. I get the idea, though, that she's doing cyberpunk body mods like, LED tattoos that can rearrange their shape because they have nano ink and stuff like that. I kind of get it. Sounds cool. I just wonder if there's a way you can describe it without having to give us a slash. And then you say, and her client, they steal alien technology and uncover a plot to destroy humanity. They uncover a plot to destroy humanity. So why did they steal the technology to begin with?
He stole the technology to begin with. That was his entire reason for having the DNA implanted in him. It was illegal to have it done so because it was proprietary property of these aliens, who are the type of group that will destroy an entire planet if they think that you've stolen their genetics. And the reason for it being that all of their secret technology, all of their spaceships, all of their weaponry require their genetics to fire them, as they're useless otherwise to others.
But
because
so
their technology was out. Right. So he had her put the genetics in him. The reason she did it is because she has a father who's a bit of a degenerate gambler who owes money to the mob locally, and the mob was threatening to take her shop, which he used as collateral against the bet. And so she's offered a lot of money to do this illegal genetic procedure. And he goes to a tattoo shop rather than to a formal geneticist in a hospital who does things like, repair, your DNA if you've got genetic problems of that type.
So it sounds
he
like
goes to her.
But it sounds like your protagonist didn't steal anything.
And she doesn't, and then the aliens come for her, and she ends up, escaping and running off with him. And she finds out that he did it because he's in corporate espionage, and they're trying to steal the technology. And then they find out later, of course, that the technology is actually meant for invasion.
Okay, so it sounds like your main character did not steal anything.
Mm-mm.
But it says that in the series logline, a tattooist and her client steal this tech. But this is more like I'm being drawn into a conflict by my client that has already stolen something. Is that right?
Yes. He's stolen the genetics, and then later the two of them together will steal this ship.
Okay, so I think
she gets stuck with it.
So I think
she has to get off planet immediately, and he takes her with him because he feels guilty about having put her life in danger.
Okay, so I think you need to adjust your series logline to reflect what's actually happening in the show. And in this case, it sounds less like your main character stole anything and more like this strange client of mine offered me a bunch of money to get involved in a criminal operation. And then I have to sort of, I guess, go on the run with him afterwards. Is that right?
Yeah. In the pilot, she goes on the run, and later they steal the technology, find out the other stuff.
Okay, so I would definitely adjust your series logline to reflect that. Pilot. All right, when a 25th century tattooist / aesthetic geneticist fuses illegal alien DNA, fuses it to what or to whom?
To another human being.
Right.
To
Okay.
a corporate espionage spy.
Oh, okay. I would include that. She and her customer, who is the spy, must flee hostile
She doesn't know that he's
forces.
a corporate espionage pilot, though. She only knows that he's corporate espionage, like after the pilot or towards the end of it.
Oh, who does she think he is for most of it?
She doesn't know. She just knows he's a guy who's offering her a whack load of fucking money to do something illegal.
Okay, so a mysterious criminal, I guess, is how you might describe him, or something like that. I would clarify whom she's actually fusing this stuff to, and then you say they have to flee hostile alien forces. Is there like a destination or a goal post or a concrete objective there in some way? Like, are they trying to get to a safe house? Are they trying to get off world? Are they trying to get to a specific spot?
Yeah, he's trying to get off world and back to his organization, and she's just along for the ride now at this point because She doesn't want to be dead. And it's his spaceship.
Okay, so I would mention the specific concrete tangible goalpost in the pilot logline and clarify what's actually happening with the DNA there.
Okay.
All right, any questions about these?
No. Like I said, it was a really crappy, quick logline that I threw together trying to figure out how to summarize the idea.
All good. Yeah, I think there's a strong foundation here, the idea of futuristic body modification. We've seen it in shows before, but it's never really been the basis of a show to this extent before. So seems like a good story area. Thanks for sharing this.
Cool.
Arthur, do you want to talk about your show idea?
Yeah, I would like to talk about my show idea.
Okay, tell us whatever you've got.
Right, hold up. Hold up, I can read it out loud, but it's a pretty simple idea. Hold up. Where are you? Oh, no, I'm in the wrong place. Oh, got it. Basically, I have this idea about a father who is forced to clone his daughter after a fatal accident to keep his family from finding out his mistake.
Oh, the accident was his fault.
Yeah, it was his fault.
Okay, pretty dark. So he makes a clone to hide the fact that he's accidentally killed his own child from his family. So what would you say the obstacle would be after he's completed the clone? Like, what is he struggling with at that point?
Well, for one, the clone isn't the daughter.
Meaning what?
The clone is different from the daughter. One, the clone is different from the daughter because it's a clone and not the actual daughter. And two, he's struggling with people trying to figure out that he just cloned his daughter.
Okay.
He's struggling with that, and he's also struggling with guilt and grief.
Okay, so this sounds not quite like a story engine yet. This is sounding pretty internal, and like the conflict is kind of limited. Are there people like actively investigating the daughter? They suspect that she's not human or something like that? Or does she behave in ways that would easily give away the fact that she's not human?
I think that she does. She does behave in ways that would indicate that she's a clone.
Okay, so is this sort of about him like training her how to blend in and live with humans normally?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I could see that. So this is kind of. Go ahead.
Also, not to mention, human cloning is literally illegal.
Okay.
No, I mean like it's actually illegal to clone a human, both in this world and that world.
Right. Okay. So in any case, I'm trying to just narrow down what the conflict would be that would make this feel like a show that could last for years, right? So I could sort of see this as like a show about it's like a father-daughter story where he's trying to teach this clone to be more like his previous child so that she'll blend in. They will trick everyone into thinking it is the old her, and also maybe lead her to living a happy and fulfilling human life. So do you see this as primarily a drama?
Primarily a drama, yes.
Okay. In that case, so I would, so as you move forward to framing the loglines for this, instead of saying he's trying to, like, the whole show is not him trying to keep his family from finding out the mistake. That is like a conflict that is woven throughout, but primarily it's about him trying to teach this clone how to be human.
Yeah. Well, rather teach the clone how to be his daughter.
Right.
But the clone isn't exactly his daughter. A clone is a clone.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't perfected memory transfer yet. So the clone has different memories, different experiences, which means that she has a completely different personality than the daughter herself.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like a strong conflict. especially if the daughter, for instance, has like a web of friends and family that she's going to have to end up having, tricking or having to convince that she is her old self. Maybe I'm not sure exactly how much tension you would get throughout the entire show from maybe people finding out that it's her. It seems like after a while they would just be like, they would kind of get used to this new clone, unless you had, for instance, somebody that was actively investigating, like working against the scientist. But I could see this as almost like a family drama that has a sci-fi element to it, where he's, yes, trying to reconnect with his own memories of his kid by training this machine or this clone to emulate them. But also, I think, we'd get a lot of that interesting conflict from, now the clone's going to have to go to prom, and he has to teach her what to do, or like how to manage that. Or now the clone is going to go to a sleepover. Now the clone is going to go to a field trip to a museum, and he has to teach her how to, like, I don't know, handle those various different situations. I think I could see it. I would, but I would definitely frame either the premise or the log lines around this concept of the dynamic between the father and the daughter. It's not. I would think it's not as much about him trying to conceal the fact that she's a clone as it is about him trying to train the clone to act like he wants to act like, a person, and like the daughter that he wants to recreate.
Oh, okay. And I also need someone who's investigating the accident and the cloning. Obviously, he's going to have a trail that leads to him, and there should be like somebody that's actively investigating this person who he believes has illegally cloned somebody.
Okay, yep, that could work. You could have a sort of antagonist, a recurring villain that's always one step behind, keeping the hero on his toes, looking into his activities and trying to expose him. That could work.
Yeah, that could work.
Okay, anybody else have any thoughts, comments, suggestions for Arthur's idea?
I was just gonna say, they could be investigating the accident, or they think it's a murder or something. They just can't prove it because of this clone.
Yeah, it could be someone that believes this was foul play or it was intentional.
Like, I know you did something to your real daughter. I'm just gonna prove it.
Yeah,
like that kind of thing.
Maybe like the daughter's boyfriend or husband.
That would be strong.
That would be someone who would definitely tell something was off, wouldn't they?
Depends how old the daughter is. It could be like a teacher or a, I don't know, detective.
Or her mom, perhaps.
Oh,
yeah, her mom. Yeah, her mother, who's starting to suspect that the daughter hasn't been the same since like the vacation.
Okay, that would be a really strong story engine element.
Yeah. I'm a little doubting my ability to actually write this, though, because it seems a little bit above what I usually write.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, you'll only expand and grow in new ways if you reach a little bit beyond your current means. So I recommend picking things that are challenging. But if it seems unexciting to you, I wouldn't go for it. I would just pick whatever's the most exciting.
It's exciting to me. I'm just concerned about my ability to write it.
Oh, don't worry.
That's all.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. The stakes are low. You're just trying to write stuff right now and improve. So there's no penalty for missing the mark.
All right. Do you think we can work on a log line, or have I extended my time enough?
We've discussed the idea, but if you want to write out a log line, I can look at it if it's done by the end of class.
Okay.
Give it a shot. If not, we have plenty more classes coming up.
All right.
Thanks, Arthur.
All right.
Okay, Luke says I've seen this one a bunch, so we can skip status quo. Okay, in that case, we'll go to Mario for now.
I mean, you've seen mine a bunch too, so you can skip mine too.
Oh, okay. Does anyone besides Luke or Mario have a logline or show premise or idea they're working on that they want feedback on?
I do have one thing maybe you could help me on. Badger does.
Go ahead, Badger.
Maybe this. Yeah, go ahead. Mine probably won't take long if we have time.
Okay, we're going here. Thanks for this. I'll paste this in the chat, and feel free to unmute and tell us about this idea.
All right, can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah, I just kind of threw this logline together. It's sort of like a practice thing. It's basically like when a blackout squad is sent to force both friend and foe into peace negotiations, they get in the crosshairs of an allied manhunt for a rogue platoon before the war reaches the 2 years mark. It's literally just me throwing this idea to the wall because like it's been something percolating in my head for a while now.
Okay. Let me just make sure I understand and ask a few questions, maybe. So, a Black Ops squad, do you mean like American soldiers?
Yeah, I'm kind of doing this like sci-fi fiction story that basically like none of the you can say that it's basically all the factions are just like new factions that I'm kind of like working out the kinks for. Haven't even appointed them names and identities yet.
Okay, so this is not taking place on modern day Earth, you're saying?
Yeah, it takes place in the near future where basically human society is coalesced into like into multiple political blocks. And this is sort of like based on the current like war going on in Israel, Iran, into October 7th. And so there's like basically a American XP, there's a Israel XP, and then there's like a Hamas XP.
Okay, got it. When a Black Ops squad is sent to force both friend and foe to peace negotiations, they get in the crosshairs of an ally manhunt for a rogue platoon before the war reaches the 2-year mark. Is this, I think I'm having a little trouble parsing this sentence. What is an ally manhunt?
And that was supposed to refer to like an ally's manhunt for someone else. That's like something that needs to be heavily cleaned up.
Oh, okay. So you're saying an allied government is searching for a rogue platoon of other Black Ops soldiers?
Yes.
Okay. Before the war reaches, does that mean they need to be caught before the war reaches the 2-year mark, or like that's the time frame they're working in, or something like that?
That's the time frame they're working at.
So how long do they actually have in terms of time remaining?
A total of 6 months.
They have 6 months. Okay, so they have 6 months to do what?
6 months to like bring everyone to peace negotiations.
Are your heroes trying to like? Are they being mistaken for this rogue platoon, and they now need to bring in the rogue platoon to clear their names, or something like that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So they are accused of something?
Yes, they're accused of something. It's basically the idea is rogue platoons still type of experimental weapon. The Allies sent a squad to another Black Ops squad to reclaim it. This for Black Ops squad, which is the main character, are basically have nothing relating to this conspiracy, and they get dragged into this unwillingly.
Okay, so when you say they get in the crosshairs of the manhunt, that means that they are mistaken for these bad guys?
Yes.
Okay, so now everyone thinks that they have done something terrible, and now their own government is after them, perhaps?
Their own government's allies are after them.
Okay.
But
Got it. Okay, so their allies are now pursuing them, and I guess you're saying now in order to clear their names, the only way they can do that is by apprehending the actual villains here?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. So I would try to just hammer those things out in a little bit clearer, more concrete terms in this case. And so I think what you're saying is when a futuristic Black Ops squad is mistaken for a group of war criminals, they must then go capture those war criminals to clear their names. Does that sound right to you?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. So I did understand after asking enough questions, but I think just the information presented in this log, or maybe this wasn't even a complete log line, so it's totally fine. It doesn't have to be like perfect and ready to go. But I was just kind of unclear on what the characters were actually trying to do and why. So I would try to just, in terms of presenting a series logline, just lay out those bare facts. You've got the futuristic good guys. They're mistaken for the bad guys. Now they need to catch those bad guys to clear their names. That's the essentials of the series premise. And then for a pilot, it's okay if you don't have anything ready to go yet. But do you have an idea of what would happen in the first episode?
Unfortunately, I don't. The only clear ideas I really have currently are like all of that relates to sort of like the weaponry and sort of the world building elements. None of that relates to the characters and their motivations yet. This is just
Okay. That's all right. You're still pretty early. But
Yeah,
in any
it
case, so I guess a place to start next would be either. So world building is great, but since you're only really going to be able to write the pilot, then the more that you build, eventually it can start to become overwhelming because it's like you'll never get to actually explore all of this. So I would try to really focus on, in terms of, we were talking before about the big idea, so figure out what is that core kind of speculative sci-fi element that I want to really dive into in this episode. Maybe it's the futuristic society that you're kind of creating, where we've stratified all of humanity into these few factions that are kind of like XPs of other real existing ones. So maybe the politics is the focus, or maybe is it this sort of like paramilitary organization of Black Ops futuristic soldiers that can, like, you know, surgically strike anywhere in the world, and we're going to dive really into the organization that does that. Maybe that's the point of focus. It can be whatever you want, but in any case, the series, it sounds like it's going to be following soldiers that are tracking down these bad guys and using advanced technology to try to catch them or to try to take them down in various ways. So I'm getting the sense this is an action-adventure show. Is that right?
yeah.
Got it. Okay. Maybe even could even be like a cartoon. Something about it gives me the like G.I. Joe kind of vibe to it, like the G.I. Joe cartoon, and they're sort of really advanced soldiers and ninjas and stuff like that.
This is definitely not G.I. Joe. I'm like literally going to be focusing more on the politics, geopolitics, and sort of like more darker aspects like warfare than G.I. Joe.
Gotcha. Okay. More Metal Gear than G.I. Joe. Understood.
Yeah.
So in any case, yeah, so you can write the series log to amplify or bring to the forefront the specific take that you have, like whatever it is that you want to dive deepest into. And in terms of just what's going on, I would try to just lay it out like I had just explained a few minutes ago. When this event happens, these characters must do this specific thing, or else, or before this. But
Okay,
seems like
yeah.
a strong idea. Go ahead. Did you have any other questions on this one?
No, I really don't. It's just like you gave me a lot of stuff to think about, like kind of what's going on right now.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, dig a little deeper into those things, and then you can start coming up with your characters, and that should give you some ideas as well. At least think of like, who is my main point of focus? Who is my main character? Is it the leader of the squad, or perhaps if it's not the leader of the squad, is it is it the explosives expert? Is it the sniper? Is it the tactician? Is it the logistics guy? You can find a sort of point of view to add even more clarity and focus to it.
Okay.
Cool. All right, thanks for sharing that. I hope that gives you some good ideas to think about for now. Okay, let's reopen to anyone who wants to discuss their logline or show premise.
This might be pretty quick. So, in my series logline, I say he cons his way through interplanetary crises, but being a con man is maybe more active and it implies more ambition than this character might have. So I'm just thinking of a better way to state what he actually does in the show.
Okay, when a suicidal work-dodging schlub is resurrected aboard a starship with a roster of misanthropes, he cons his way through interplanetary crises while trying to earn enough credits to die. So are you saying he's not trying that hard?
Yeah, he's not really that ambitious. He's just sort of putting work off on others, if that makes sense. That's what I meant by con.
I think that does work. I don't think you necessarily need to make it seem less active than it is. But
Okay.
if you're looking for a different word, though, often
Less ambitious.
often we'll see things like he bumbles his way through interplanetary crises, or stumbles, which kind of suggests that they like fail forward through those things and they're always screwing up, but they somehow end up working out in their favor.
Okay.
Or he
Maybe
Well,
this is
go
one of
ahead.
those if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I think it works well, yeah, as is. I mean, I wouldn't be too concerned that somebody would read it and go, I expected him to care more or something like that.
Yeah, okay. I get it.
I think it
Thank
does
you.
work. Yeah, no problem. Okay, we have about 20 minutes. Does anyone else have a show
Pollock
concept they
was-
want to workshop? Go ahead.
Pollock posted his logline.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay, Arthur, let's take a look at this logline. And is this the series or the pilot? Looks like the series, I think.
Yeah, series.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Let's take a look. After a fatal mistake claims the life of his daughter, a grieving father illegally clones his daughter to keep his family from finding out his misdeeds, and must coach the clone to be his daughter in order to do so, even if her personality and experiences don't line up. Okay, I think you have included some good info here for sure. I would suggest that it sort of seems to remove responsibility from the character by saying a mistake claims her life rather than after accidentally killing his daughter, which probably would make it feel more solidly like his fault. You also repeated the word daughter 3 times in the logline, so I'd recommend try to avoid repeating words or phrases more than once.
Oh no, it was meant. It was meant to be accident, but I couldn't spell accident, so I made a mistake.
Oh, okay, no problem.
For some reason, I couldn't spell accident.
It's all good.
But yeah, that's like accidentally killing his daughter. I should just make it clone her. Illegally clones her.
Right.
To keep his family from finding out his mistake.
Right. Okay, so after accidentally killing her, a grieving father illegally clones her and must coach the clone to blend in as his daughter despite her radical new personality or something like that. So I think that if you're already saying he has to coach her to blend in, you don't need to mention that he needs to keep his family from finding out. We already understand that.
Yeah.
And must coach the clone.
And wants coach the clone to be
to blend in.
Oh, to blend in. And
yeah, must coach the clone to blend in.
Despite her.
Does she have some sort of weird new personality? Like, how does she behave now? Is she kind of like, this is sort of like a Frankenstein type story, right? So does she have to relearn how to do basic things?
No, not really. She just has like a drastically different personality.
Is she dangerous?
Because it's strong. What?
Is she dangerous?
I haven't figured that out yet.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah. Despite her radically different personality, that's
yeah, that works pretty well.
Really different personality.
There we go. Okay. Much simpler phrasing here. This makes a pretty good series logline. After accidentally killing his daughter, a grieving father illegally clones her and must coach the clone to blend in, despite her radically different personality. That works well. That could almost be a sitcom. It's a pretty dark premise, but it almost feels like it could be like Modern Family kind of tone.
Yeah. Hold up. Is there any way you can like post it in the chat so that I can like write it so I can keep it in my notes or something?
Yep, sure, I just did that.
Thank you.
No problem. Nice work with this rewrite.
Okay. Then thank you.
No problem. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay. Let's reopen the floor. We've got 15, 20 minutes. Who else would like to work on their show idea? If there's no more, we can always do my premise jumpstarts. Whoops, too big.
Oh. Oh, thank you.
Arthur, your mic is still unmuted. Would you mind clicking that mute button?
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, if there's no more for now, then let's move into premise jumpstart for our last couple minutes. This is, or for our last, 15 minutes of class. This is a activity to come up with premises for shows based on the big idea first, or based on the area of technology first. So we could maybe look at this sheet full of various science fiction concepts, and then I'll take volunteers if you guys want to maybe pitch a couple different ideas for that one scientific speculative tech premise, looking at it from different angles: professions, mysteries, personal. Who wants to volunteer?
I will go, I guess.
All right.
I'll go first.
Which?
I was gonna say I can go too.
Okay, we'll have
Either
Megan
way.
second. Let's pick a topic.
Okay. Just one I like, or one I think would make a good story engine.
Whatever you like.
Singularity.
Okay. Singularity. So for anyone who doesn't know, can you briefly explain what singularity means?
Well, there's two. There's the singularity inside of black hole, and then there's the one I'm going with is like the singularity is this idea in transhumanism where biological life and machines like merge to form this like perfect utopia or something.
Yeah,
I don't know how to
AI
explain it.
machines reach human levels of intelligence to the point where they are as smart or smarter than us, and to some extent you can no longer even tell the difference between humanity and artificial constructs.
There's a different term definition of singularity.
Go ahead.
It's where internet is like, think of the internet, but like 30 times, 100 times it, so that all individuality is lost and we become one massive intellect.
Interesting. Okay. So you can...
Here's
Go ahead.
Like the textbook definition is a hypothetical future point in time at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable consequences to human civilization.
Oh, wow. That was sort of different from all of our understandings of it. But in any case...
Yet it still encompasses every single one of our...
They all come from that idea.
Right. Okay. So, you can take whatever aspect you want. You don't have to stick to one concrete definition. But let's start with picking an angle on this speculative element. So I could just pick one. If you see one on this sheet that appeals to you, you can pick one to begin with, and then maybe I'll throw you a curveball.
I'm going to use X was used to kill someone.
Okay. Singularity was used to kill someone. Who did it? Why? And how do we stop them?
Who did it? Why? And how do we stop them? I'm not sure. It's a really difficult question. So imagine you have basically the ultimate weapon where you can kill anyone, anywhere, anywhen instantly with no more than a thought. And I guess the who would be, if it's anyone, maybe it's somebody from the future. So like the singularity occurs in the far future, but it's used to sort of take people out throughout time. And a detective in the present or the near future has to figure out why and how to stop them.
Meaning people from the future are committing murders in the past?
Yes.
That's pretty cool. I think we saw something a little bit kind of like that in the movie Looper.
A little bit.
And so in this case, you have a mystery that is based on the singularity, like as a larger concept, being used to kill somebody in the past. So what you're saying is sort of like once we've reached the point that all of humanity is networked together with machines, then you'd be able to cerebro somebody to death by just thinking about it, basically?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. That would be definitely pretty hard to solve because that relies entirely on technology that we don't have access to.
Yeah, they're just taking people out to improve the current timeline or something, or to stop little problems that might occur in the current timeline. They're just taking people out in the past.
Yeah, how could we possibly combat that, I wonder. You'd almost have to find the people that will eventually do that and stop them. But then again, they would be aware that their past selves were in danger, right?
I guess the investigation would lead to some company, sort of like devs that are working on this advanced technology. Maybe they're even getting messages from the future to develop this thing faster or something.
Yeah,
A little bit of a time paradox.
In the movie Wanted, this is a fantasy, not a sci-fi, but in Wanted, it's about this group of assassins that they commit murders to improve the world, and they get told who to kill by this kind of thread full of, or like a loom full of different threads, and it sort of is like I don't know what entity exactly is responsible for it, but it sort of says like, hey, if you kill this CEO, then it will prevent a major disaster from happening in 50 years. Things like that. Interesting.
Could be. And how do we stop them? I guess he must go to the future, or find a way to send a message, send like a computer virus into the future or something to disrupt the singularity.
Could also
but then you
have to kidnap the head of that company while he's still a child, almost like Terminator.
That's what the people that are getting killed are working on. Is they've gotten wind of this time paradox thing, and they're trying to, since it's basically a dystopia in a way, they're trying to send like a virus into the future to disrupt it.
Oh, okay. And they're aware of that, and they're trying to stop them from taking them down.
Exactly.
It's like a war between the past and the future.
Yeah.
Or like a Cold War. That's cool. Reminds me a little bit also of Counterparts, a show that not enough people saw on Amazon with J.K. Simmons. Thank you, Luke, for that suggestion. Oh, do you have a title idea? It can be silly.
Title idea. Don't really have a good one.
Okay, we'll call it Singularity Cop for now. Starring Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, definitely. Then the solution would just be to karate kick whoever is committing the murder.
We'd have to find them and kick them into the past.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Luke. Megan, did you want to go next? Oh, maybe she stepped away. She's not in the room. Okay, who would like to go next?
I'll go.
Okay, great. Let's pick a topic.
Can I actually get back to the topic page real quick?
Yep, I'm on it now.
On some ideas to know genre terms, actually. I don't see the topic page at all.
The subject matter list, if you want. This one here.
We're going to go try and do something with working scientific definition of predestination.
Predestination. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, let's pick something anything besides the one that was just picked. If anything here jumps out to you, you can pick one, or I can throw one at you if you want.
Throw one at me.
Okay, let's do heists. I do heists either utilizing this idea of predestination or on people who use it. I guess it'd be pretty tough to do a heist on somebody who can see the future. So probably I do heists using this concept of seeing the future.
Yeah, so basically go like, there should be essentially someone, basically individual does heists on people who you can see 5 days into the future. So does that work?
A character that does heists using his ability to see 5 days into the future. Yep, for sure. That could work. What else can you add to flesh out the story engine?
Posting this out, it could be basically essentially focus on it's basically how disability actually kind of affects him personally, where basically he doesn't exactly see time normally. It's instead of basically when he's playing a heist, he sees 5 days in the future, but he's successful or not. When he's in the planning phases or talking to like collaborators, he won't just see random events from their future that have nothing to do with the heist but their lives. So essentially, it's him trying to navigate the world with a disability that inhibits, really where he's basically commenting on talking about like future events that will make no sense to any other individual, thus causing him trouble to basically connect emotionally.
Okay, so you're focusing on the psychological impact of being able to see the future on just the single central protagonist?
Yes.
Could be interesting. And it sounds like this is a more solitary one. This isn't like a team of people that are doing this. This is just one guy.
Solitary for like 4 people as well. Essentially, we'll focus on the first essentially being able to basically building up and just like a division trying to fill out this team while it's like trying to get its abilities under control and have in the middle essentially having the team try to function working on to like trying to build up this repertoire. And then like third act, essentially the team falling apart and then just sort of losing trust in each other while the ability takes a psychological toll and basically destroys the main character personally.
Okay, yeah, it would be a different show if they could all do this versus only one guy on the team can do this, but they all kind of use his visions to guide their jobs. Kind of like reminds me of a show like Leverage a little bit, but with that added speculative element.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other ideas there that you want to share or questions you want to ask?
Yeah, I was going to throw like the timer up the idea that like the main character who's doing all these fights has like a time limit of like a couple of days because of relating to the fact he has some kind of like disease or dying illness that's basically causing him to feel like he's like trying to steal the funds essentially kind of save his own skin, and essentially a lot of his comments and interactions with teammates tend to relate more to the negative aspects of the teammates' personal lives. So would that work? Yeah, that would.
Yeah, I think it would, for sure.
Yeah.
A strong story engine usually involves a web of characters. Like, one person alone can only support so much show just by themselves. So having a team of other characters for them to bounce off of, for them to like, some they dislike, some become rivals, some become friends, some become lovers. These things almost always flesh out a story engine.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that idea. We have time for one more. Anybody else?
Is Megan back? Oh, nope.
I guess not.
No volunteers?
All right, Luke, do one more
No
for
one?
us. You'll finish us
All
off with
right.
one more. Do you want to pick from this
let's-
list of terms, or we can choose from the topics if you want?
Let's go list of terms.
These are a bit more specific.
Let's go with psionics.
Psionics sounds cool. All right, I'm going to throw you a curveball on this one. I'm in love with someone, but I must overcome the psionics which are keeping us apart.
Oh, okay. That's pretty easy. If one lover does not have psionics and the other one can read their mind, that would create some immense relationship issues.
Okay, like what?
Because one person would never be able to trust the psionic person.
That's a
how
big
to
question,
see-
isn't it? That's kind of interesting. Isn't that the paradigm in Twilight where Edward can read minds but not Bella's mind for some reason? Thinking of True Blood. Is that True Blood or is that Twilight? Somebody clarify that.
I have no idea.
Okay. But in any case, yeah, that question of trust. Could you even be with someone that you know can read your mind at any time? Or maybe as an aspect of that relationship, is there something that you could do to block that intentionally? Or maybe they would say, hey, if you wear this hat, then I can't read your mind. Maybe that could kind of tie into the dynamic there in some way. Like, it would feel very violating for someone to read your mind constantly.
Yeah, well, I mean, the second you take the helmet off, they can figure out what you were thinking when you had the helmet on. So,
Oh, God, yeah. If you can dig through people's memories and retroactively understand their thoughts in the past, then yeah, it depends how powerful the psionics are, I suppose.
it's like a love story between Professor X and Magneto.
Isn't it already?
Wait, don't we already have that?
Yeah, in a certain way. So okay, there we go. So you kind of have a situation that has an interesting compounding element. I wonder if there's something more you can add here that can beef up the story engine besides just, well, they're two people. Like, is one of them like a psychic cop or something, or is one of, like, why does one of them have psychic powers? Might be a question. Is one of them an alien or a robot or?
Okay. Alien is easy. We could do like a Starman kind of setup where this magic man from the sky appears and a woman falls in love with him, but then their relationship is tested when by the psionics, by the how can I trust you? You can read everything I'm thinking, but I can never read what you're thinking, you know?
You could also, you can add more, like, there could be more drama than that as well, by the way, if you start adding in other things, like maybe as a result of him being a mind reader, he has all kinds of government secrets in his mind, so there's people after him, and that's kind of keeping them apart too. That's like an aspect of his powers that is preventing them from being together.
Yeah, like 11 from Stranger Things. She's on the lam. That could work.
Yeah. He just happened to walk by the White House, and now he's like, oh crap, now I know all the nuclear codes.
Yeah, the second government agencies get a hold of him, that he exists, they're going to try to sort of use him as a weapon.
Right. And so, in that case, it would it's not only that there is a problem that would compound the difficulty of the relationship. There is also that logistical, physical problem of we need to get away from the bad guys that are after us.
Yeah, it could also be a Day the Earth Stood Still thing where it's like, I have a really big secret that I just can't tell you, but it's part of my mission. You just have to trust me. You know, that could exacerbate things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially if we build a lot of trust and rapport first. Like, maybe the relationship starts without her knowing that he is this alien guy. And then after they get to know each other, he's like, I have a mission here, but I can't tell you, or something like that. That's sort of an element of mystery to keep us going.
Yeah, there could be a lot going on there. Like a problem of the week you could do. You could always, evading captivity, like The Fugitive. Lots of things you could do.
Right. And maybe always there's that possibility of the main character gets the psionic powers at some point herself.
Yeah, or she gets kidnapped by the government and they use her as a bargaining chip to convince him to do things, like Dr. Manhattan style. A lot you could do.
Thanks for that suggestion. We are just about out of time, but hope this activity gave you guys some ideas of how you can take a topic or an area of subject matter and then kind of extrapolate or funnel that down into something that feels more like a show. It can lead to these somewhat cliched premises sometimes, like I'm a cop who investigates blank, or I'm a bounty hunter who looks after blank. These can feel sort of samey, but you can see why they work so well. You can see why it unifies our characters in terms of goal, situation, and thing of the week, and how you can use that sort of plot structure to explore that topic in many different ways. Exploring it as a mystery is very different from exploring it as a romance, which is different from exploring it as an action-adventure, etc. Lots of possibilities when it comes to sci-fi, and one of the things we love about it the most is that it just opens our imaginations to how these things can be combined in new ways, and gives us interesting thoughts about where we could be going. So we're going to wrap up here for now. We have these TV classes every Sunday from 11 to 1, at least for the remainder of the boot camp. We have features on Fridays from 6 to 8. There's 4 weeks left in that boot camp. That lasts 8 weeks total. And we do novels from 12 to 2 on Saturdays. There's going to be a table read later today at 2 p.m. All right, thanks so much for coming by, guys. Hope you got some good ideas and speculation on your sci-fi concepts. And for next time, we hope that you bring in whatever you've got, however you're able to work forward into your next step, whether it's a sketchbook, more advanced or refined logline series and pilot, or maybe you have